Hebrews chapter 11 is one of the most inspiring chapters in all of the Bible. The chapter really goes into detail about great faith and what great faith looks like, and it even gives us an incredible definition of faith in verse 1. Verse 1 says this, "Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see." And then the author of Hebrews goes on in verse 6 to say this, "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." What we can understand from reading that is that following Jesus is going to require faith, right? Being a follower of Christ, living the life that he wants us to live, we're going to have faith in things that we can't see. We're going to have faith in his word. We're going to have to live a life of faith. But Hebrews also goes on to tell us that we need to have specific, or we should have specific moments of faith in our life that will require God to do a miracle. That if God doesn't show up, things are not going to work out well. In fact, if you read this chapter, what you find is that 18 different times, when mentioning different heroes of the faith, the author of Hebrews says it was by faith this person did that. It was by faith this person did that. And they just go on and list person after person from the Old Testament who did great things, stepped out in faith, and saw God move in a miraculous way. These were individuals who positioned themselves for a miracle because of their great faith. And today, as we've been talking about positioning ourselves to have an eternal impact in the next generation, and as we close out the last session today, I just felt like it was appropriate to challenge you to position yourself to be in need of a miracle. To position yourself to be in need of a miracle. Because if we're going to position ourselves to have an eternal impact on the next generation, we have to lead with the example of faith, stepping out and doing things that require God to move. A while back, my wife and I were at a missions dinner where we were trying to raise money for Speed the Light. If you're unfamiliar with Speed the Light, it's the missions initiative of student ministries in the Assemblies of God, which we're a part of and we give to. And Speed the Light does a lot of great things around the world. My wife and I were at a Speed the Light missions giving dinner. And as we were there, I felt like the Lord was speaking to me. My wife had gotten up and gone into the lobby because my daughter was being kind of fussy. I felt like the Lord was speaking to me, and I sensed that he was asking me to sell my car and give the money to Speed the Light for missions. As I'm sitting there, I'm having this inner dialogue with the Lord, and I was like, "Lord, do you really want me to sell my car and give the money to missions?" He said, "Did I stutter?" No, he didn't say that. I promise you he didn't say that. He is kind. But he did confirm it in my heart that that's what he wanted me to do. And so I had this little agreement with God. I said, "Lord, I will do this. I'll sell the car. I'll give all the money to missions. However, it would be really nice if you could communicate to my wife that that's what we're supposed to do. I would really love it if you could do that for me. Tell her that's what we're supposed to do. We have a very comfortable couch in my house. I just have no desire to sleep on it. Can I get an amen?" I didn't want that happening. So I gave the Lord a few days in case he wanted to change his mind. And then I went to my wife and I said, "Lauren, I think that the Lord spoke to me about our car. I think we're supposed to sell the car and give the money to Speed the Light for missions." She said, "If that's what God's asking you to do, then you have to do it." And so we sold the car, we gave the money to missions. Well, I still needed another car if I was going to be getting to work and doing different things, and if my wife was going to have a vehicle. And so I did what I wouldn't encourage anyone else to do. I had to take out a loan to get a car because I had just sold the car that would have been my money for the new car. So I had to take out a loan. Again, it felt a little bit irresponsible, but I just had to do it. I didn't have a choice. Well, the next few months, the Lord started blessing us. It was good measure, pressed down, shaken together, but I was still waiting for the running over part. I hadn't seen God bless like I thought maybe he could or he would if we had stepped out in faith like that. But I was speaking at a youth event. It was a youth retreat at a church, and I'd been there for the weekend. It was my final message, my final sermon of the event. I'm getting ready to walk up on stage, and just before I hit the stage, this young guy, probably 10 years younger than me, he walks up and he starts pacing right in front of me, kind of in my space. And he says, "Hey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have a question for you." He said, "Do you have Cash App?" And I said, "I do have Cash App, but I never really use it." He said, "What's your Cash App name?" I was like, "Look, man, I'm here to serve you, to serve your youth pastor, your students, your church this weekend. Whatever you feel like you need to do, you don't need to do it. You really don't. I'm here to serve." He said, "Listen, I've got to do this. What's your Cash App name?" So I gave him my Cash App name, and he types something in his phone, and he like dramatically walks away. And he's like, there, it's done. And he leaves. And I was like, it's kind of weird. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I got a sermon to preach. So I get ready to walk up on the stairs to go preach this message. As I'm hitting the stairs, I get a notification on the top of my phone. That young man, almost 10 years younger than me, so he would have been probably in his mid to lower 20s. He had just transferred into the thousands the exact amount of money that I had sold my car for and given to missions. He didn't know me. He didn't know my story. We had not talked. He knew virtually nothing about me other than what I had shared in my sermons at this event. He had no idea what we had done. And the Lord reminded me that when we step out in faith, when we do what God asks us to do for Him, He will always do for us that which we could never do for ourselves. But we don't get to experience those moments unless we step out in faith, unless we position ourselves to need a miracle, placing ourselves in a position where we need God to show up, where we need a miracle to happen. The truth is, we didn't sell our car and give the money to missions because we wanted to impress people. That had nothing to do with it. We only did it because we were trying to be obedient to what we thought God was asking us to do. Stepping out in faith, saying, God, we need a miracle. And sure enough, God did a miracle. And what I found to be true after that story is that because we positioned ourselves in a place where we actually needed a miracle, God did one. And that testimony has been shared to thousands of students around the nation. And we've seen student after leader give money to missions themselves based on the testimony of something that my wife and I walked through. So I just wonder, what kind of impact could you have on the students and the children in your ministry if you were willing to do things that required a miracle to happen in your life? If you stepped out in faith and said, you know what, we're going to take a step believing that our faith is going to inspire someone else. Because here's what I've found. It's not even the miracle itself, the miracle of provision that God did that inspires people. It's usually the faith to hear and obey that inspires people and leaves an impact on their life that lasts so much longer than our time here on this earth. It inspires people to step into powerful moments of faith. And so real quickly, as we conclude this session, and really as we conclude the day, I just want to look at a few questions that we should be asking ourselves about what we have and how we can make a decision to position ourselves to be in need of a miracle, essentially stepping out in faith. First question is this: asking ourselves, what do I have? What do I actually have at my disposal? As far as my time, my talents, and my treasure, my finances, what do I actually have? I challenge you to take inventory over what God's already blessed you with. Most of us, if we answer this question honestly, we will find out that we don't really have a resource problem. We just have an application problem, right? It's not that we don't have everything we need to step out in faith. It's that we're just not applying what we already have and stepping out in faith with it. So what do you have? What talent, ability, skill, what treasure, what resource do you have right now at this moment on this day? Ask yourself, what do I have? Next question is this: how am I using it? Not only asking ourselves, what do I have, but how am I using what I have? Am I using what I have to build my platform, or am I using what I have to build God's kingdom? How am I using what I've already been given? Am I using it to help myself, or am I using it to help others? Asking ourselves that question: how am I using what I already have? I know what I've got. Now, how in the world am I using it? And question number 3 is this: how might God want to use what I have? How might God want to use what I have? So not only what do I have and how am I using it, but how might God want to use what I have? What does He want to do with everything that I'm bringing to the table? With my gifts, my talents, my time, my ability, my treasure, any resource or knowledge that I have, how might God want to use that? How might He be challenging me to step into a moment where a miracle is needed, positioning myself to need God to show up and do the miracle, believing that my faith is going to inspire the next generation, leaving an eternal impact. Because the truth is, we're not trying to impress the kids in our kids ministry. We're not trying to impress the students in our youth ministry with the things that we do, but we do want our faith to inspire them to live the life that they were meant to live and have an eternal impact on them for the glory of God and the building of His church.